Broadcasting from the Fort of Bruin in the High Moor, Middle Earth, this is the Secret Fire Podcast, sent to burn at the heart of the world, episode number 31. I'm Michael.
I'm Micah.
On this episode, what is that? Nothing. It's just a wisp of cloud. Wait, who said that? And did they say it correctly? Let's find out. We invite you to come along, join the fellowship, become a servant of the Secret Fire each week here on the GCT network.
This is your Great Commission transmission.
Well, each week may be a bit of a bold statement there here as of late.
A very bold statement.
Micah, welcome to the studio today.
Thank you.
And it's just us. Are you talking into your microphone?
I am. It's a bit low.
All right, there we go. Yes, where have we been? We took another, it seems like, 3 weeks since the previous episode, and we did that 3 or 4 weeks the time before. A lot of things are going on here at the GCT network, friends, so let's go ahead and get you caught up on some things before we get into today's episode and the topic at hand. Brendan is not in the studio today. You may have noticed that. You didn't hear his voice. He won't be back in the studio until potentially or hopefully March 23rd. And there's a very good reason for that. He is as busy as the proverbial one-armed paper hanger.
What is this?
I knew I was going to get that response out of you. A paper hanger is a person that hangs wallpaper. You may have seen that take place in old episodes of I Love Lucy and things such as... There's a great I Love Lucy episode, actually. I think of Lucy and Ethel. But I digress. And so if you have a fella or a lady that their job is to hang wallpaper and that person only has one arm...
Yeah, I imagine it'd be hard.
Yeah, he's really busy. He's directing and acting in Arsenic and Old Lace at his community theater. Plus, Brendan works at an elementary school Monday through Friday.
Does he?
Yes. Plus, he works at his local radio station on Saturdays all day. Plus, he's in the middle of moving, his family moving into a new house. And he also helps care for his dad. His dad's ill. Besides, having a girlfriend and having friends and doing this and that. And so, at least until Arsenic and Old Lace is completed, he won't be back in the studio. Now, that brings me to me, which... I'm doing 2 shows for the local radio station in our town, and one of them is an audio drama mystery theater show, which I'm performing in as well as doing all the audio editing and all of that stuff. And that's taken up a lot of my time. And besides that, I have a music show that airs on the weekends there. Besides our other podcast that Brendan and I do, Finding Christ in Cinema, that also airs on the local station. And as Brendan is on his hiatus, I need to be editing past episodes that haven't been aired yet on there, so that takes time. And plus, I'm preparing for a Secret Fire podcast, as well as homeschooling my youngest child, who's 5 years old. Monday through Thursday, I do that. So Micah and I are going to be in the studio here doing Secret Fire podcast until Brendan gets back. I sent him an email. I said, would you hate it if Micah and I continue doing Secret Fire podcast? He says, no, I wouldn't hate that at all. The fellowship is demanding more episodes.
Good. We got his consent.
Yes, we did. And so Micah and I will carry on. And we're going to ask you right now to bear with us, right?
It might feel weird, but...
Yeah, we'll have to get our show legs on, our 2-man show legs. Mike and I used to do a podcast together when he was 11 years old.
You did a podcast.
No,
you... better way to do
that. No. So... coupled with that, if any of you listeners, if you actually read the show notes, the blog posts that I write up for Secret Fire Podcast, I'm going to also ask you to bear with me on that as well, because I'm going to whittle those way down and just put the bare minimum on the blog post at secretfirepodcast.com. So that's what's going on. And Micah, besides that, you are in your last semester of high school?
Oh man, it's so much work, man. No, it's really not. I don't have anything going on. I got no excuse. So.
That's what you're supposed to do in your last semester of
Do
senior
nothing?
year. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, you're doing that Lord of the Rings study still, right?
Oh yeah. But
How is that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Personally, I'm starting to like it a lot more, though. This author is very opinionated on some things, and I rather disagree with some of the opinions, but it's really nice to, because I read the books almost every day of my life. I just listen to them on audiobook whenever I'm doing something. But when you really focus in on very specific things that, personally, I never paid much attention to, like the poems, and this show has helped me pay attention to the poems, and then my book has helped me pay attention to characters, and because there's some characters that I never liked, but now I do like, such
good.
as Galadriel. But it's I really enjoy it. It's really fun.
Good. How far along are you in that? That's a big book.
I'm slightly ahead. Well, not slightly. I'm at the beginning of Two Towers in it. So.
Okay. Well, good deal. Keep us abreast on how that study is
I
going
shall.
along, and anything that sticks out to you, bring that to the table here, the round table, in our newly renovated studio. All right. So last time, part 2 of The Ring Goes South, we made our way all the way up to the Fellowship leaving Rivendell. I want to back up just a little bit here, and let's get to the book. I'll put that on the screen if you are watching the video on Twitch. If you're watching live, welcome. If you're watching after the fact, we usually try and get these uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. So here we go. At that moment, Elrond came out with Gandalf, and he called the company to him. "This is my last word," he said in a low voice. Oh, this is my last word. The ring-bearer is setting out on the quest of Mount Doom. On him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed to let any handle it, save members of the company and the council, and only then in gravest need. The others go with him as free companions to help him on his way. You may tarry or come back or turn aside into other paths as chance allows. The further you go, the less easy will it be to withdraw. Yet no oath or bond is laid on you to go further than you will. For you do not yet know the strength of your hearts, and you cannot foresee what each may meet upon the road. "Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens," said Gimli. "Maybe," said Elrond, "but let him not vow to walk in the dark who has not seen the nightfall." "Yet sworn word may strengthen quaking heart," said Gimli. "Or break it," said Elrond. "Look not too far ahead, but go now with good hearts. Farewell, and may the blessings of the elves and men and all free folk go with you. May the stars shine upon your faces. Remember that benediction that Aaron gave to the house of Israel." Let's go ahead and begin.
It is time to set forth. Farewell, and may the blessing of elves and men and all free folk go with you. May the stars shine upon your faces.
They crossed the bridge and wound slowly up the steep paths that led out of the cloven vale of Rivendell. And they came at length to the high moor where the wind hissed through the heather. Then, with one glance at the last homely house twinkling below them, they strode away, far into the night.
And that was taken from the 1981 BBC production, radio production of The Lord of the Rings. It's a fantastic listen. It's abridged.
Who does Aragorn in that?
Oh, I'd have to look it up.
Because I like that Aragorn voice a lot.
And I really love Bill Nighy as Sam in that. Skipping ahead a paragraph. Many others of Elrond's household stood in the shadows and watched them go, bidding them farewell with soft voices. There was no laughter and no song or music. It's a very somber event. You know it? I mean, they are standing there saying this company of 9, and more specifically, this little hobbit carries the fate of Middle-earth. This was a very somber occasion. At last, they turned away and faded silently into the dusk. They crossed the bridge and wound slowly up the long, steep paths that led out of the cloven vale of Rivendell, and they came at length to the high moor, where the wind hissed through the heather. Then, with one glance at the last homely house twinkling below them, they strode away far into the night. Where are we in Lotro?
Nowhere near where they are, but I had to compensate because I have to be close enough to Eregion. But
Oh, okay. At the ford of Bruinen, they left the road and turning southwards, went on by narrow paths among the folded lands. Now, are you at the ford of Bruinen, or are you past that?
I'm along it.
Okay, so in game, because I can't see your computer screen, if you are that path, so when you cross the ford of Bruinen, is that heading due south, or is it like southwest?
Let me just pull this up real quick. That would be heading left is east.
Yes.
Yes,
Well,
so
if you're pointed south and then left.
if you cross the ford from Rivendell and you head along the path, it's heading east.
Okay. So then they turned southward. So they went more due south.
They went along the Bruinen, which is the way I went.
Oh, okay.
So a bit southeast. Yeah.
Alrighty. Their purpose was to hold this course west of the mountains for many miles and days. The country was much rougher and more barren than in the green vale of the great river in Wilderland on the other side of the ranges, and their going would be slow. But they hoped in this way to escape the notice of unfriendly eyes. The spies of Sauron had hitherto seldom been seen in this empty country, and the paths were little known except to the people of Rivendell. Gandalf walked in front, and with him went Aragorn, who knew this land even in the dark. I love rangers. The others were in file behind, and Legolas, whose eyes were keen, was the rear guard. The first part of their journey was hard and dreary, and Frodo remembered little of it save the wind. For many sunless days an icy blast came from the mountains in the east, and no garment seemed able to keep out its searching fingers. And there's a lot of beautiful language in this section. That's why I really wanted to go through this casually. Though the company was well clad, they seldom felt warm, either moving or at rest. They slept uneasily during the middle of the day in some hollow of the land, or hidden under the tangled thorn bushes that grew in thickets in many places. Does the land in Lotro remind you anything of what we're reading here?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. In the late afternoon, they were roused by the watch and took their chief meal, cold and cheerless as a rule, for they could seldom risk the lighting of a fire. In the evening, they went on again, always as nearly southward as they could find a way. At first, it seemed to the hobbits that although they walked and stumbled until they were weary, they were creeping forward like snails and getting nowhere. Each day, the land looked much the same as it had the day before, yet steadily the mountains were drawing nearer. South of Rivendell, they rose ever higher and bent westwards. And about the feet of the main range, there was tumbled an ever wider land of bleak hills and deep valleys filled with turbulent waters. Paths were few and winding, and led them often only to the edge of some sheer fall or down into treacherous swamps. They had been a fortnight, 2 weeks, on the way when the weather changed. The wind suddenly fell and then veered round to the south. The swift flowing clouds lifted and melted away, and the sun came out, pale and bright. There came a cold, clear dawn at the end of a long, stumbling night march. There's another one of those hyphenated words, which really comes from Beowulf.
Yes.
The travelers reached a low ridge crowned with ancient holly trees whose gray-green trunks seemed to have been built out of the very stones of the hills. Their dark leaves shone and their berries glowed red in the light of the rising sun. Away in the south, Frodo could see the dim shapes of lofty mountains that seemed now to stand across the path that the company was taking. At the left of this high range rose 3 peaks. The tallest and nearest stood up like a tooth tipped with snow. Its great, bare northern precipice was still largely in the shadow, but where the sunlight slanted upon it, it glowed red. Gandalf stood at Frodo's side and looked under his hand. "We have done very well," he said. "We have reached the borders of the country that men call Hollin, or Holland. Many elves lived here in happier days, when Eregion was its name." Is that on the map?
Eregion?
In Lotro? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And what part is that? I'm thinking in Lotro, so when I go south of Rivendell and I go through those little valleys and things and fight dragons or what are they? Drakes.
Drakes.
Right. Is that where?
No, that's I don't think that's a canon area.
Okay.
I think it's that what you went to with the Drakes was called Giants Valley or something.
Okay.
It's the section between the High Moor and Eregion.
Gotcha. 5 and 4. Where'd the sounds go?
Oddly quiet here.
Oh, that's ominous. It is very quiet. 5 and 40 leagues as the crow flies we have come, though many long miles further our feet have walked. The land and the weather will be milder now, but perhaps all the more dangerous. Dangerous or not, a real sunrise is mighty welcome, said Frodo, throwing back his hood and letting the morning light fall on his face. But the mountains are ahead of us, said Pippin. We must have turned eastward in the night. No, said Gandalf, but you see further ahead in the clear light. Beyond those peaks and range bends, let me try that again. But beyond those peaks, the range bends round southwest. There are many maps in Elrond's house, but I suppose you never thought to look at them. Yes, I did sometimes, said Pippin, but I don't remember them. Frodo has a better head for that sort of thing. I need no map, said Gimli, who had come up with Legolas and was gazing out before him with a strange light in his deep eyes. There is the land where our fathers worked of old, and we have wrought the image of those mountains into many works of metal and of stone, and into many songs and tales.
I love Gimli's enthusiasm throughout this whole chapter.
What do you mean? Expound on that.
How he feels like he's returning to his home, even though he's never lived here, but his fathers of old, lived here, and it's just when it says like his eyes light up with a passion, and it's just
the strange light in his deep eyes.
To see a character like Gimli have that kind of emotion is really cool.
It's interesting that you say that, Micah, that he has this passion and this love and this connection and this belonging to a land that he hasn't lived in, but it was his ancestors' land, because that really ties into, I planned on stopping here anyhow and dwelling on this. Again, Gimli says, I need no map. Oh, he was gazing out before him with a strange light in his deep eyes. There is the land where our fathers worked of old, and we have wrought the image of those mountains into many works of metal, of stone, and into many songs and tales. They stand tall in our dreams. And names these mountains Baraz, Zarak, and Shathur. This reminds me, here we're going to get into our Christian themes here for the day. This reminds me of the importance, and Brendan and I have talked about this for years now. We've been podcasting together for over 4 years on our other show, Finding Christ in Cinema, and then some of those same concepts we have incorporated into the Secret Fire podcast. We spend a lot of time talking about art, whatever art it is. Gimli is talking about images worked into metal and stone, and those images worked into songs, and those images worked into tales, and the importance of all of these things, art, whether it is metalwork or stonework or songs or tales, these are things that bring people closer together as a people. This is what binds Gimli to this land of his fathers. He hadn't lived here, but it is his. It's his inheritance, really. And that's a very Christian concept. And it is a concept, it is something that us now, living right now in the 21st century, our inheritance that we have possession of was laid. The foundation was laid by Jesus and the apostles and those disciples in the first century that lived through conditions that we can't imagine. And how did they do that? They did that through songs and tales and sharing and community and art. It reminds me of a few passages here from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 5 through 6 out of the New American Standard Bible. Paul says, "For you," he's writing to the Thessalonians, the church in Thessalonica. Let's keep that in mind. He is writing to specific people, and he says, "For you are all sons of light and sons of day," just like Gimli is the sons of the fathers who wrought these things, that founded these things, and preserved them. So then, Paul continues, "Let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober." And that's what Gimli is right here. He was gazing out before him with a strange light in his deep eyes. He was lit up. Man, this is exciting stuff. Verse 11 of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, continuing, "Therefore, encourage one another and build up one another, just as you are also doing." Verses 14 through 18, "We urge you, brethren, admonish the unruly, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with everyone. See that no one repays another with evil for evil, but always seek after that which is good for one another and for all people. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." And I see this in this simple paragraph. I see it in Gimli. His fathers did him well because of what they preserved. This is your inheritance. This is who you are, Gimli, so that he can look on these mountain peaks and just be in love. Let's skip over to Colossians chapter 3, verses 16 through 17. And again, for context's sake, Paul is writing to the church in Colossae. And he says, "Let the word of Christ richly dwell in you." Well, how? How do you let the word of Christ richly dwell in you? He says so. With all wisdom, teaching and admonishing. There's that word again. He used that same word toward to the Thessalonians. Teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. How do you teach and admonish one another? With psalms, with hymns, with spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts. That's what Gimli says. There is the land where our fathers worked of old, and we have wrought the image of those mountains into many works of metal and of stone, and into many songs and tales. A couple of times Paul used the word admonish. Admonish, what does that mean? I think that we pour too much meaning into that word, and we have actually, some people have kind of redefined that and made it say something that it's not. Admonish, we like to equate that to rebuke. I rebuke you, right? Because we like to be able to do that kind of thing. We love to be able to rebuke somebody. I rebuke you. No, admonish. The Greek word that I cannot pronounce, nautheteo, something like that, is to put in mind. To put in mind, to caution or reprove gently. How do you put something into the minds of others? Through works of metal and stone and songs and tales, right? Teaching and admonishing one another. Teaching and putting into the mind of one another these things with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts toward God. This is a fantastic scene, and you were right to say what you just said. I love Gimli throughout this chapter. It is fantastic. Only once before have I seen them from afar in waking life. He's never been there. He's seen them from afar. But I know them and their names, for under them lies Khazad-dûm, the Dwaro-delph, that is now called the Black Pit, Moria in the Elvish tongue. Yonder stands Barazinbar and the Red Horn, cruel Caradras. I can't ever say that word.
I can't say it.
Caradras. Caradras.
Caradras,
Yes. And beyond, remember that.
Okay.
And beyond him beyond him, the personification
I
of
love that.
Yes. Beyond him are Silverteen or Teen and Cloudy Head, and we'll continue on. There, the misty mountains divide, and between their arms lies the deep-shadowed valley which we cannot forget. The Dimridel, which the elves call Nandhurian. Perhaps maybe they say that. That's what I say. I don't know what the elves say. It is for the Dimridel that we are making, said Gandalf. If we climb the pass that is called the Red Horn Gate, under the far side of Caradras, we shall come down by the Dimril Stair into the deep vale of the dwarves. There lies the Mirrormere, and there the river Silverlode rises in its icy springs. Dark is the water of... I like this, too. This is good to him. Dark is the water of Khalid Zaram, said Gimli, and cold are the springs of Kibil Nala. I don't know how to say any of these. My heart trembles at the thought that I may see them soon. That's really touching to me.
Yeah.
My heart trembles at the thought.
It really makes Gimli a more endearing character at this point.
Really. And I love John Rhys Davies. I love John Rhys Davies as an actor. I don't love what they did to Gimli and just make him the butt of jokes. Mm-hmm. Right? Man. Such a proud character, such a proud man, and not prideful. Proud of what his fathers have left to him.
Yep.
And we, going back to those Christian themes, we can take pride in what the church fathers and the Christians of old, the heritage that they left us. So let's make sure that us as believers, us as disciples of Christ, are not twisting the heritage that we have. Let's not turn it into an ugly thing. It's a beautiful thing, and Christians are kind, right? We, as Paul said to the Thessalonians, we admonish, we gently reprove, we put in mind the unruly. Somebody's unruly, you gently remind them of their heritage. We encourage the faint-hearted, we help the weak. We are to be patient with everyone. We are not to pay another with evil for evil. But we always seek after that which is good for one another, believers, and all people. It's important that we remember those things. Carrying on, Gandalf says, "May you have the joy of the sight, my good dwarf. But whatever you may do, we at least cannot stay in that valley. We must go down the Silverlode into the secret woods, and so to the great river, and then..." He paused. "Yes, and where then?" asked Merry. "To the end of the journey. In the end," said Gandalf. "We cannot look too far ahead. Let us be glad that the first stage is safely over. I think we will rest here, not only today, but tonight as well. There is a wholesome air about Hollin. Much evil must befall a country before it wholly forgets the elves, if once they dwelt there." Can we talk for a moment about Eregion?
Please.
Oh, goodness, that is Hollin. Hollin or Hollin. I've actually listened to somebody pronounce that one, and I can't say it that way. Hollin. Eregion, or Hollin, was a sub-realm of the Noldoran elves of Eriador during the Second Age, located, of course, near the walls of Moria, under the shadow of the Misty Mountains. It was founded in Second Age 750. The elves of Eregion lived in harmony with a dwarven civilization, trading freely with their kingdom of Khazad-dûm.
It's not the first time we've seen something like that.
Refresh my memory.
A dwarf kingdom trading with another race.
Oh,
and living in harmony.
Talking. Are you going way back, or are you thinking of Dale?
Dale and
right. And the Lonely Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, an unprecedented friendship between the two races began in that time. Eregion's jewelsmiths achieved the highest level of craftsmanship since Feanor. Eregion was populated by Noldor and for a while ruled by Galadriel and Celeborn until they left for Lothlorien on the other side of the Misty Mountains. It was then ruled by Celebrimbor.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Celebrimbor? You've been playing as him.
He is the one who forged the Rings of Power.
Right. Now, what about that game that you've been playing?
Okay, well, it's not particularly... I mean, it is true enough to the lore, but it's not a good example, I would say. But in this game...
Which one?
What's it called? Shadow of Mordor.
Okay.
Shadow of Mordor. You play as a ranger from Gondor who was the watch on Mordor. Like Cirith Ungol? I'm not very good with the Gondorian area, but you play as him, and he is slain by servants of Sauron, and then he is possessed by the spirit of Celebrimbor, who lingers for unknown reasons. But and in the newer game, I don't know if I should actually spoil this or not, but
the game's been out a long time.
Okay, Shadow of War is the newer one, and in that one, they actually forge a new ring, showing that Celebrimbor still has...
Yeah. Okay, but so I'm wondering right now if Celebrimbor is in that game, if he hung around because he feels so terrible about what he did.
In the game, he knows that it was he who brought around the ability for Sauron to forge the One Ring.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can't wait till we actually get into Celebrimbor years down the line from now. Well, he was a descendant of Feanor. And under his rule, the elves of Eregion became friends with Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. And this is what Micah was talking about. And he created the Rings of Power. When Anatar was revealed as the Dark Lord Sauron, the elves of Eregion tried to keep the rings from falling into Sauron's hands, but only managed to rescue Vilya, Narya, and Nenya, the three rings of the elves. And we really haven't got to a point where we can start talking about those either. But
we've seen two of them.
Yes, I can't wait till, Brendan doesn't know about the third one. Okay. Anyway, Sauron returned to Hollin with vengeance in 1697. I'm assuming we're still in the Second Age here, and despite the assistance of the dwarves, he utterly destroyed it. And the survivors fled to Lindon, Lothlorien, and the refuge of Imladris, Rivendell, where we just came from. And the doors of Moria were shut and sealed, and Celebrimbor was slain. Now, In this part, in the Third Age, where we are right now, Eregion was a pleasant but unpopulated land. Excellent stuff. So, that's what Gandalf says. There is a wholesome air about Holland. Much evil must befall a country before it wholly forgets the elves, if once they dwelt there.
There's another, the land or a place being sentient.
Yes. Anthropomorphized.
Mm-hmm.
That is true, said Legolas, but the elves of this land were of a race strange to us of the sylvan folk. And the trees and the grass do not now remember them. I only hear the stones lament for them. Deep they delved us, fair they wrought us, high they builded us, but they are gone. They are gone. They sought the havens long ago. Wow.
Hearing a stone lament.
Tolkien is just... How do we say it on every single episode? And I'm sure that we do. Do we say it multiple times on every single episode? I'm sure that we do. So let's continue the trend.
And
Tolkien
we should.
is just an absolute genius.
Mm-hmm.
That is so beautiful. Deep they delved us, fair they wrought us, high they builded us. But they are gone. They are gone. They sought the havens long ago. That morning they lit a fire in a deep hollow shrouded by great bushes of holly, and their supper breakfast was merrier than it had been since they set out. They did not hurry to bed afterwards. Pay attention to this part, because we're going to talk a little bit about the movie here coming up. They did not hurry to bed afterwards, for they expected to have all the night to sleep in, and they did not mean to go on again until evening of the next day. Only Aragorn was silent and restless. After a while, he left the company and wandered on to the ridge. There he stood in the shadow of a tree, looking out southward and westwards with his head posed as if he was listening. Then he returned to the brink of the dale and looked down on the others, laughing and talking. "What is the matter, Strider?" Merry called up. "What are you looking for? Do you miss the east wind?" "No, indeed," he answered, "but I miss something. I have been in the country of Holling in many... What? What's yours say? I have been in the country of Holling in many seasons.
Yes.
No folk dwell here now, but many other creatures live here at all times, especially birds, yet now all things but you are silent. I can feel it. There is no sound for miles about us, and your voices seem to make the ground echo. I do not understand it." Gandalf looked up with sudden interest. "But what do you guess is the reason?" he asked. "Is there more in it than surprise at seeing 4 hobbits, not to mention the rest of us, where people are so seldom seen or heard?" "I hope that it is," answered Aragorn, as I'm just totally scrolling through pages here and lost my place. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, continue on.
I hope that is it, answered Aragorn, but I have a sense of watchfulness and fear, and I have never had here before. Then we must be more careful, said Gandalf. If you bring a ranger with you, it is well to pay attention to him, especially if that ranger is Aragorn. We must stop talking stop talking aloud, rest quietly, and set the watch. It was Sam's turn that day to take the... But hang on, let's stop a second, because I love the ominousness... that's not a word.
Ominous?
Ominous ambience is the best way to put it. Of an absence of something.
Yes.
You know, usually in horror movies or something, it's what is there, you know, you hear these sounds and stuff, but this, you don't hear anything. And that's what's scary about it.
Yes.
Have you found your place?
No!
What happened?
I'm almost there.
Okay, I'll take over. It was Sam's turn that day to take the first watch, but Aragorn joined him. The others fell asleep. Then the silence grew until even Sam felt it. The breathing of the sleepers could be painfully heard. The swish of the pony's tail and the occasional movements of his feet became loud noises. Sam could hear his own joints creaking if he stirred. Dead silence was around him, and over all hung a clear blue sky as the sun rode up from the east. Away in the south, a dark patch appeared and grew, and it drove north like flying smoke in the wind.
Okay, so this gets us to this point in the film, which, you know, so many things had to be cut out and reworked and things in order for it to work as a film. Man, I just wish that we had gotten the sense of Eregion that we just read about.
Yeah.
It just wasn't conveyed.
I wish that about a lot of the places.
Yes. So here comes this dark patch that grew and grew and drove north like a flying smoke in the wind. What is that, Strider? It don't look like a cloud, said Sam in a whisper to Aragorn. He made no answer. He was gazing intently at the sky, but before long, Sam could see for himself what was approaching. Flocks of birds, flying at great speed, were wheeling and circling and traversing all the land as if they were searching for something, and they were steadily drawing nearer. Lie flat and still, hissed Aragorn, pulling Sam down into the shade of a holly bush. For a whole regiment of birds had broken away suddenly from the main host and came flying low, straight toward the ridge. Sam thought they were a kind of crow of large size. As they passed overhead in so dense a throng that their shadow followed them darkly over the ground below, one harsh croak was heard. Not until they had dwindled into the distance north and west, and the sky was again clear, would Aragorn rise. Then he sprang up and went and wakened Gandalf. Regiments of black crows are flying all over the land between the mountains and the Grey Flood, he said, and they have passed over Holland. They are not natives here. They are Crebain out of Fangorn and Dunland. I do not know what they are about. Possibly there is some trouble away south from which they are fleeing, but I think they are spying out the land. I have also glimpsed many hawks flying high in the sky. I think we ought to move again this evening. Holland is no longer wholesome for us. It is being watched. And in that case, so is the Red Horn Gate, said Gandalf. And how can we get over that without being seen? I cannot imagine. But we will think of that when we must. As for moving as soon as it is dark, I'm afraid that you're right. Luckily, our fire made little smoke and had burned low before the Crebain came, said Aragorn. It must be put out and not lit again. Well, if that isn't a plague and a nuisance, said Pippin. The news, no fire, and to move again by night had been broken to him as soon as he woke in the late afternoon. All because of a pack of crows. I had looked forward to a real good meal tonight, something hot. Well, you can go on looking forward, said Gandalf. There may be many unexpected feasts ahead for you. For myself, I should like a pipe to smoke in comfort and warmer feet. However, we are certain of one thing at any rate. It will get warmer as we get south. Too warm, I shouldn't wonder, muttered Sam to Frodo. But I'm beginning to think it's time we got a sight of that fiery mountain and saw the end of the road, so to speak. I thought at first this here Redhorn, or whatever its name is, might be it, till Gimli spoke his piece. A fair jaw-cracker dwarf language must be. Maps conveyed nothing to Sam's mind, and all distances in these strange lands seemed so vast that he was quite out of his reckoning. All that day, the company remained in hiding. The dark birds passed over now and again, but as the westering sun grew red, they disappeared southward. At dusk, the company set out, and turning now half east, they steered their course towards Caradras.
Caradras.
Yes, which far away still glowed faintly red in the last light of the vanished sun. One by one, white stars sprang forth as the sky faded. Guided by Aragorn, they struck a good path. It looked to Frodo like the remains of an ancient road that had once been broad and well planned from Holland to the mountain pass. The moon, now at the full, rose over the mountains and cast a pale light in which the shadows of stones were black. Many of them looked to have been worked by hands, though now they lay tumbled and ruinous in bleak, barren land. It was the cold, chill hour before the first stir of dawn, and the moon was low. Frodo looked up at the sky. Suddenly he saw, or felt, a shadow pass the high stars, as if for a moment they faded and then flashed out again. He shivered. "Did you see anything pass over?" he whispered to Gandalf, who was just ahead. "No, but I felt it, whatever it was," he answered. "It may be nothing, only a wisp of thin cloud." "It was moving fast then," muttered Aragorn, "and not with the wind."
Sorry!
What is that?
Nothing. It's just a wisp of cloud.
It's moving fast. Against the wind. Crabine from Dunland!
Hide! Hurry!
So Peter Jackson and Fran and all those other folks obviously smashed two things together.
Mm-hmm.
And which is fine for a movie, but I still maintain that Holland, that Eregion, was just left in the cold. You know, just didn't convey what we just experienced reading in there.
You played that clip at this point, but you don't think that was another cloud?
Here where we just finished reading? No, but I felt it, whatever it was. I think it's one of the fell beasts.
Me too.
Okay.
Because throughout the movie, you don't see... Well, throughout the book, we see it appear once or twice.
Yes.
And then...
We're going to see it over over when they are on the Great River.
Mm-hmm. And I won't spoil what happens then, but...
Yeah.
That's what I believe that was at this point.
Yes. Let's read that again. Here, let me back up one page. It is. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time reading on this Kindle because sometimes it's not cooperating with me when all I want to do is flip a page, man. Why is that so hard to do? It was the cold, chill hour before the first stir of dawn, and the moon was low. Frodo looked up at the sky. Suddenly, he saw or felt a shadow pass over the high stars, as if for a moment they faded and then flashed out again. I don't care how many birds were in that flock. They're not going to wholly, darken the stars.
Not dense enough, man. Yeah.
No, it's not dense enough. At least a star or two is going to make its way through a couple of the birds. Mm-hmm. And he shivered. "Did you see anything pass over?" he whispered to Gandalf, who was just ahead. "No, but I felt it, whatever it was. Felt it."
Again, I love how it's not they saw a shape specifically. It's just the absence of something. The absence of the
it was
stars.
like a black hole.
Yeah.
The absence of light, yes. "It may be nothing, only a wisp of thin cloud." "It was moving fast then," muttered Aragorn, "and not with the wind." Aragorn saw that too. What in the world is it? I don't know, but this is where we're going to stop for today.
You need say no more. We'd best get a move on. There are still goblins about.
Oh, bother. More mountains?
No, don't you see? The sun is setting in the west, behind the mountains. We're on the other side, to the edge of the land beyond.
Fantastic writing in this section that we read. Just, where did the sounds go?
Sorry, I had to pull up my spreadsheet because I forgot to pull it up.
All right. We did send out party invitations last week, and they didn't come back. They didn't come back void.
What on earth are these?
Replies to the party invitations.
Good gracious.
Yeah, good gracious. Did I say last week? I should have said last episode. We received an email from Daniel Payne. Daniel sent that email to secretfire@gctnetwork.com. And he says, first off, I love the show and have really appreciated all the great discussions, especially in regard to the world building Tolkien did. Y'all's knowledge has helped me to fill in the world better and appreciate Middle-earth even more. Wow.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah. He continues, the production is also fantastic. I especially love the Lotro sounds. Keep it coming. In the Ring Goes South last episode, we got to the part of the chapter where Bilbo sings in Rivendell. I have wanted to share a song I came across a few years back that took the lyrics of the song and put it with music. The song is called Farewell, the Company by Jeff Martin and Steve Payton. I'm not sure if you can play it on the show or not, but I thought you could point listeners in its direction. I've appreciated many of the Tolkien-inspired songs y'all have played, and so I wanted to share one with you guys. Here's a link to the song. Thanks again for all that y'all do on the podcast. I get excited every time I see it appear in my feed. Signed, Daniel. Thank you so much for the kind words.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and no, we can't play this song because I haven't got permission from anybody. We need to get permission before we do things. But we'll play just a few seconds here from the YouTube channel, and I will embed this in our show notes if I remember to do so.
I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies.
So there you go. You get the gist of the sound of that.
I like it.
And again, that's a YouTube video. And if I remember, I'll go ahead and embed it in our blog post on secretfirepodcast.com for everybody to go and listen to that. So thank you so much for that feedback. Very encouraging. I have also had some conversation with a fellow by the name of Joel Howbaker. I'm sorry, Joel, but via Twitter, you can follow him at Real Life Leading. He sent me a link to an essay that he wrote called The Catholic and the Convert, and it's about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. And I haven't read it all. I've been working through it. But Joel, if you are listening to it, that's fantastic stuff. And we may see if we can get Joel on a future episode, a special episode, and get some more of his thoughts on that. Very well thought out and written. And anybody you want to send us feedback, we'll give you all the ways to do that here in just a moment. But before we go, let's send out more. Well, no, that's it. That's exactly what I was doing. I just led right into the next part here. We're going to send out those party invitations right now. Next week, join us for part 4 or maybe next week. Hopefully next week for part 4 of The Ring Goes South. The Secret Fire podcast is live whenever we're live in the GCT Network studio. We'll send out notifications so that you can join us for the live video on our Twitch page at twitch.tv/secretfirepodcast.
You can join us on the Arkenstone server and Lord of the Rings Online at lotro.com, and you can support the GCT Network and the Secret Fire podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/GCTN.
To find out more about the Secret Fire podcast, as well as our other shows, including Finding Christ in Cinema and the Theonauts, visit our main webpage at gctnetwork.com. You can send us email to secretfire@gctnetwork.com. You can call us on our voice line at 507-407-GCTN. Again, that's the Hobbit hotline, which I believe is... I think it's back in operation there in Crick Hollow.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not
Who's
sure.
running it?
Well, Fatty Bulger's there.
I don't think he'd go anywhere near there again.
He's there, all right. That's 507-407-4286. follow us on Twitter at Secret Firecast, and you can communicate with us that way as well. You want to subscribe to the podcast, you can do it in any of your podcatchers, the iTunes or whatever they call it now, Apple Podcasts app or something, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, whatever podcatcher you use, search them all for Secret Fire Podcast. Our theme song, Hobbit's Dance, is from the album Memories of Middle-earth by Brobdingnagian Bards. You can find out more about them and buy all their music on their website at thebards.net. And until next time, we regret to tell you that, where is it? I don't know.
This is the end. I'm going away. I'm leaving. Now, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
It was tied to a wisp of thin cloud. All right. If anybody was watching us on Twitch this whole entire time, thank you very much. And again, go and subscribe to the podcast. That's the best way to interact with the show. And get over to our website at secretfirepodcast.com. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.